The HOA tried to use my yard as their winter snow dump, and I swear I never imagined a quiet, peaceful winter morning would turn into the kind of drama you'd expect from a movie. But that's exactly what unfolded. I stepped outside at 7 a.m. with a warm mug of coffee in my hand, expecting to breathe in the calm, cold air and enjoy the morning. But instead I froze in place when I heard the loud beeping of a maintenance truck reversing on my property. At first, I couldn't process what I was seeing. A truck, not in the street, not near the sidewalk, but fully halfway into my yard like it belonged there. And before I could say a word, the lift went up and dumped a heavy, dirty pile of snow. Snow mixed with mud, salts, tire marks, broken ice chunks, even random trash, right onto my land. I rushed forward, waving my arms, yelling, "Hey, what are you doing on my property?" The worker casually shrugged, didn't even look nervous, and said, "HOA told us this side is community space. They said it's fine." That sentence rattled in my head like thunder. Community space? My yard? My land? I told him to stop, but he just pointed to his clipboard and said, "Orders from the president. Ask them." So I marched straight to the HOA office, my boots crunching through the snow, my breath sharp like smoke from frustration. Inside, the HOA president sat like she was ruling an empire, scarf around her neck and an expression that screamed control. She barely looked up when I explained what just happened. She gave me this cold little smirk and said, "We made a community decision. We have to put the snow somewhere, and you have the space." I asked whether I signed an agreement, whether they had any permission, any documents, any proof that this land belonged to them, and she just shrugged. "This isn't up for debate," she said. "Consider it your contribution to the neighborhood. Don't make this difficult." And that was it, the moment everything switched inside me. If they wanted to play disrespectful, I was going to answer with something they'd never forget. I went home, pulled up the town's regulations, property lines, and legal notes. And here's the twist. If someone dumps unwanted material on your property without consent, you are legally allowed to return it, as long as you don't leave it somewhere unsafe. And since the HOA had a private road reserved specifically for board members, that was the perfect place to return the community contribution. I wasn't just going to shovel it back. I wanted to make a statement they would feel. So I rented a front loader. Not a snow shovel. Not a blower. A full industrial machine. The kind that could move mini mountains. When I drove it back into my yard, the sound of the engine echoed like a declaration of war. I scooped up every single pile they had dumped, slowly, carefully, with a level of satisfaction that felt like justice. I moved it to the entrance of the HOA's private street, the road they needed open, the path the board relied on, the access they couldn't function without. And I sealed it, completely, pile after pile, building a wall of snow as tall as a car. It looked like winter itself had decided they didn't get to use that road anymore. A blockade of their own arrogance returned right back to them. By noon, my phone rang like an alarm. HOA members shouting, "You can't block our street. This is illegal. You're endangering the neighborhood." And I answered calmly, "I returned the snow. The same snow you dumped. We're even." They threatened lawyers, fines, consequences, but nothing scared me because I knew I was in the right. Then they called the police. Sirens arrived, lights spinning in the snow, and I felt a moment of tension. Not fear, but anticipation. The officers checked property lines, I showed documents, I showed photos, and as they reviewed everything, the HOA president stood there acting like she had already won. But the officer turned to her and said, "Actually, he's within his rights. Looks like you dumped on private property without permission." The look on her face cracked from confidence into disbelief. The officer told them they had no grounds to accuse me, no authority to use my land, and that if anything, I could press them for trespassing. The board members were speechless, and for the first time all day, the president had no comeback. By late afternoon, HOA trucks arrived again, this time slow, respectful, almost embarrassed. No shouting, no arguing, no pretending they were in control. They removed every grain of snow from my yard. They cleared the entire mess they created. And then, without me prompting, they began clearing the pile I used to block their road, working with the kind of hesitation that comes from knowing you crossed the wrong person. When the road was finally open, the president walked toward me, her voice stripped of authority. She said, "We'd like to discuss a fair agreement going forward." And I answered with the same calm they refused to give me earlier. "Next time, ask permission, not forgiveness." That was the moment everything shifted, not just the snow, but the balance of respect. They realized that property lines are not suggestions, boundaries are not decorations, and respect is not optional. News spread around the neighborhood. People who never talked to me before walked by and whispered, "Good job." Even residents who used to defend the HOA avoided eye contact with the president. The board that once acted like royalty now acted like guests in a place they once tried to control. And I learned something I will never forget. Winter might be cold, but entitlement is colder. Snow melts eventually, but consequences don't. So yes, they tried to use my yard as their snow dump. They tried to treat my land like it belonged to them. But they regretted it when I sealed their road shut and returned every ounce of disrespect back to their doorstep. Because if there's one thing I know now, it's this: respect goes both ways.